Arizona Territory, 1875. Dust billowed beneath the stagecoach wheels as it rolled into Tucson, a harsh sun beating down on the small frontier settlement. Danielle Hartford pressed her face against the window, her green eyes taking in the wooden buildings and dirt streets. Despite the primitive conditions, her heart swelled with anticipation. Here, far from Boston's suffocating social circles, she would begin anew with Edward Blackwood, the man who had captured her heart during his business trip east. "Almost there, miss," the driver called back. "Your fiancé waiting for you?" "Yes," Danielle replied, touching the simple gold band on her finger. "He's established quite a business here." The driver nodded. The Blackwood name carries weight in these parts. As the stagecoach rolled to a stop, Danielle smoothed her travel-worn blue dress. She had chosen practical clothing for the journey west, though it still marked her as an Easterner. Her long black hair was pinned up beneath a modest hat, a few rebellious strands framing her face. Edward stood waiting, as handsome as she remembered in his tailored suit, so out of place among the rough-hewn settlers. Yet something in his eyes seemed different as he helped her down. "Danielle," he said formally, barely brushing her gloved hand with his lips. "You've arrived safely, good." His cool reception caught her off guard. "Edward? Is something wrong? We'll discuss it at my home." He gestured to a waiting carriage, more elaborate than most vehicles in town. The ride to Edward's house passed in uncomfortable silence. Danielle's attempts at conversation were met with curt responses as they traveled to the edge of town, where a surprisingly grand home stood. Inside, Edward dismissed the servants before turning to her. "I received a telegram 3 days ago from my business associate in Boston." Danielle's stomach tightened. "What did it say?" "That your father's investments failed completely, that the Hartford name is now synonymous with bankruptcy." His voice hardened. "That you come with nothing but the clothes on your back." The blood drained from Danielle's face. I was going to tell you. Father only told me just before I left." "Were you?" Edward paced the room. "Or did you hope to secure our marriage before I discovered the truth?" "That's unfair," she whispered. "You asked me to marry you because you loved me." Edward laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "I admired your beauty and your name. The Hartford shipping fortune would have expanded my interests considerably." He stopped before her. "I'm a businessman, Danielle. I don't make poor investments." "An investment?" Her voice trembled. "Is that all I was? What else would you be? This is the West. Men don't survive here on sentiment." He removed a small pouch from his desk. "This should cover your return passage to Boston." Tears blurred Danielle's vision. "You're breaking our engagement." There was no formal announcement here. No one need know of our arrangement. "But they will," she said, a cold realization settling in her chest. "People saw you meet the stage. They know who I am." Edward's expression hardened. "That's unfortunate, but not my concern. I've arranged a room for you at the hotel. Tomorrow you'll take the eastbound stage." That night, Danielle lay awake in her sparse hotel room, the sounds of the saloon below echoing through the thin walls. Her future, once so certain, had crumbled to dust. Return to Boston? To what? Her father's disgrace, a life as a spinster relative passed between pitying family members. The following morning she ventured into the general store for supplies, feeling the weight of stares. Word traveled quickly in small towns. "Miss Hartford," the shopkeeper said, his tone laced with false sympathy. "Terrible shame about your circumstances." As she gathered basic necessities, 2 men entered, their spurs jingling against the wooden floor. She recognized one as a regular at Edward's table, Thomas Wheeler, a cattle rancher with a reputation for cruelty. "Well, if it ain't Edward's cast-off," Wheeler said loudly. "Turns out a pretty face ain't worth much without a fortune behind it." Danielle stiffened but continued selecting items. Wheeler moved closer. "Course, a woman alone out here has options. My ranch could use a woman's touch." His voice dropped lower. "Among other things." "No, thank you," Danielle replied firmly, though her hands trembled. "Proud, ain't she?" Wheeler's companion laughed. "Won't last long. Town ain't kind to women without protection." Danielle paid quickly and hurried back to her room. That night, after darkness fell, she made her decision. The eastbound stage wouldn't see her as a passenger. Instead, she gathered her meager belongings, the few dollars she had, and the horse she purchased with money meant for her return passage. Under the cover of darkness, Danielle Hartford rode out of Tucson, heading not east toward her past but south toward an uncertain future. The desert stretched before her, vast and unforgiving, yet somehow less threatening than the town behind her. What she didn't know was that Thomas Wheeler had seen her purchase the horse, and in his mind, a woman fleeing alone into the desert was an opportunity too tempting to resist. Dawn broke over the Arizona desert in spectacular fashion, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Danielle had ridden through the night, pushing her horse as far as she dared. Now, as the sun climbed higher, she sought shelter from its punishing rays. A small outcropping of rocks provided some shade. Dismounting, she sipped sparingly from her canteen. The water supplies she'd hastily purchased wouldn't last more than 2 days. She had no clear destination, only a desperate need to escape. "I'll find a settlement," she told herself, "somewhere no one knows of Edward Blackwood or Danielle Hartford." As she rested, the desert's silence wrapped around her. For the first time in her life, no one watched her, judged her, or expected anything from her. The vastness felt like freedom, terrifying and exhilarating. Her momentary peace shattered at the sound of distant hoofbeats. Scrambling up the rocks, she peered across the landscape. 3 riders approached, following her trail. Even at this distance, she recognized Wheeler's distinctive hat. Fear clutched at her throat. She'd heard stories of what happened to women caught alone in the territories. With trembling hands, she mounted her horse and urged it forward, away from her pursuers. Hours blurred together as the chase continued. Her inexperienced riding and tired mount were no match for the seasoned horseman behind her. When her horse stumbled, nearly throwing her, Danielle knew she couldn't outrun them. The terrain grew more rugged as she pushed deeper into the wilderness. Jagged mountains rose in the distance, Apache territory according to the stories whispered in town, a place where settlers feared to tread. "Better the Apache than Wheeler," she murmured grimly, steering toward the forbidding landscape. By late afternoon, her horse was barely moving, foam flecking its mouth. Behind her, the pursuers had closed the gap. Desperate, she abandoned her mount near a small stream and continued on foot, climbing higher into a rocky ravine where horses couldn't follow. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the land. Danielle wedged herself between 2 boulders, praying the growing darkness would conceal her. Her body ached, her throat burned with thirst, and her once neat dress was torn and dust-covered. "She's up there somewhere," Wheeler's voice echoed through the ravine. "We'll wait her out. No Eastern lady survives a night in Apache country." As darkness fell completely, Danielle remained hidden, listening to the men making camp below. She dozed fitfully, startling awake at every sound. It was during one such moment of wakefulness that she sensed, rather than heard, a presence nearby. Moonlight revealed a silhouette on the ridge above her, a man motionless as the rocks themselves, watching. Not Wheeler or his men. They remained by their fire below. This figure was different, taller, hair longer, body adorned with what appeared to be ceremonial paint. An Apache warrior. Terror froze her in place as the figure descended with silent grace, moving closer until he stood mere feet away. In the pale moonlight, she could see his features, strong, angular, eyes dark and piercing. Red and white paint marked his face in stark patterns. A knife hung at his waist, a bow slung across his back. He studied her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. Then, to her shock, he spoke. "Why do you hide, pale woman?" His English was accented but clear. Danielle's voice caught in her throat. "Those men, they're hunting me." The warrior's gaze shifted to the camp below. "White men often hunt what is not theirs to claim." "I'm not theirs," she whispered fiercely. Something in her response seemed to resonate with him. He considered her for a long moment before speaking again. "I am Paco," he said simply. The name startled her, not what she expected from an Apache warrior. Reading her confusion, a hint of something like amusement crossed his face. "The Spanish missionaries gave this name. My people call me Nastas, he who runs swift." Realization dawned on Danielle. "Your red shadow," she breathed. Stories of this warrior had reached even Boston, tales of raids on settlements, of battles with the U.S. Cavalry. He inclined his head slightly. "This is what your people call me." Danielle's heart hammered in her chest. She was speaking with the most feared Apache in the territory, A man said to show no mercy to settlers who encroached on his people's land. Yet here she was, deep in Apache territory, facing him alone. "Will you kill me?" she asked directly, finding strange courage in absolute fear. Paco studied her, his expression unreadable. The moonlight caught in her raven hair, illuminating strands that seemed to capture the night itself. Something in her desperate courage and the defiant flash of her green eyes held his attention. "No," he finally said, "not tonight." He moved with fluid grace to the edge of her hiding place, looking down at Wheeler's camp. "But they will find you when the sun returns. And they hunt for reasons that bring shame." Danielle swallowed hard. "I have nowhere to go." Paco turned back to her, extending his hand in a silent gesture. The meaning was clear. "Come with me." Every sensible part of her mind screamed against it. To go with him was madness, yet the alternative was Wheeler and his men or slow death in the desert. Taking a deep breath, Danielle placed her hand in his. His skin was warm, calloused from a life of survival. With surprising gentleness, he guided her up and away from her hiding place, leading her higher into the rocks where his horse waited. With one fluid motion, Paco mounted and pulled her up behind him. "Hold," he commanded simply. As they rode away into the night, Danielle looked back once at the campfire below, at the life she was leaving behind. Then she turned forward, arms hesitantly encircling the waist of the warrior who had claimed her when all others had rejected her. The night wind carried the scent of sage and dust, and beneath that something else. The faint fragrance of her hair that seemed to captivate the man who had spared her life for reasons neither yet understood. Dawn found them high in the mountains, where pine trees replaced desert scrub and the air carried a cool crispness. They had ridden through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horse. Danielle, exhausted beyond measure, had fallen into an uneasy sleep against Paco's back, her arms still loosely wrapped around his waist. She woke to stillness, the horse no longer moving beneath them. Opening her eyes, she found herself looking at a small settlement nestled in a hidden valley, not a white settlement with its rigid buildings, but a collection of dwellings that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Apache wickiups made of branches and hides stood in a loose circle, with people moving purposefully among them. "This is your home?" she asked, her voice hoarse from thirst. Paco dismounted in one smooth motion, then helped her down. Her legs nearly buckled beneath her. "One of many," he replied. "My people move with the seasons." As they approached the settlement, activity ceased. Women paused in their work, children stared openly, and warriors reached for weapons. Danielle felt the weight of their stares, suspicious, hostile, questioning. An elderly man stepped forward, his face deeply lined by sun and time. He spoke rapidly in Apache, his gaze never leaving Danielle. Paco responded calmly, gesturing occasionally toward her. The conversation continued, growing more heated. Other voices joined in, some angry, others merely concerned. Finally, Paco turned to her. "You will stay, for now." "They don't want me here," Danielle observed quietly. "No," he admitted, "but they trust my judgment." A woman approached, older than Danielle, but not elderly, her bearing dignified. She carried a water skin and offered it without speaking. "Nijoni," Paco said, "my sister." Danielle accepted the water gratefully. "Thank you." Nijoni studied her with dark, intelligent eyes before speaking. "My brother brings trouble to our camp." Her English, like Paco's, was accented but clear. "I didn't ask to come," Danielle replied. "Yet here you are." Nijoni's expression softened slightly. "Come, you need rest and clean clothing." The following days passed in a blur of new experiences. Danielle was given a small space in Nijoni's wickiup, simple clothing of soft deerskin and basic duties to perform. The tribe tolerated her presence warily, children keeping their distance, women watching her work with critical eyes. Paco remained distant, often absent for days on hunting expeditions or what Danielle suspected were raids against encroaching settlers. When present, he observed her from afar, seldom speaking directly to her. One evening, as she sat alone outside Nijoni's dwelling, he approached and sat beside her. "You adapt," he said simply, the first words he'd spoken to her in days. Danielle looked down at her hands, once soft and white, now calloused and tanned. "I have no choice." "There is always choice," Paco countered. "You could have returned to your town, to your man." "He was never mine," she said bitterly. "He wanted only what I could bring him." Paco nodded slowly. "White men measure worth in possessions." "And how do the Apache measure worth?" she asked, meeting his gaze directly. "By strength, courage, loyalty to the people." His dark eyes held hers. "You have strength I did not expect." The compliment warmed her unexpectedly. "Your sister says I bring trouble to your camp." "You do." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "But trouble finds me regardless." Their conversation was interrupted by shouts from the perimeter of the camp. Paco rose immediately, tension visible in every line of his body. Warriors gathered as a scout reported breathlessly in Apache. Nijoni appeared at Danielle's side. "Soldiers," she explained grimly, "coming this way." "Because of me?" Danielle asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "No. They hunt our people always." Nijoni's voice was hard with old pain. "But they will use you as excuse if they find you here." Activity erupted around them as the camp prepared to move. Children and elders were gathered, possessions bundled quickly. Paco issued orders, his authority evident in how swiftly others obeyed. He returned to Danielle, his expression grave. "You must decide. Go with us deeper into the mountains, or return to your people." "I have no people," she replied, the truth of it aching in her chest. Something shifted in Paco's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of a pain he understood too well. "Then, you come with us." As they prepared to depart, a young warrior approached Paco, speaking rapidly and pointing toward Danielle. The conversation grew heated, the younger man's gestures becoming more aggressive. "What's happening?" Danielle asked Nijoni. "Keme believes you should be left behind," Nijoni explained. "He lost his wife to soldiers last winter. His heart is bitter toward all white people." Paco ended the argument with a few sharp words, turning away from the seething young warrior. As he helped Danielle mount his horse, Kem's dark gaze followed them, hatred burning in his eyes. They traveled through the night, higher into the mountains where pine forests grew dense and rocky outcroppings provided natural protection. The new camp was established with practiced efficiency, though more primitive than the one they'd left behind. That night, as Danielle helped Nijoni prepare a simple meal, she asked the question that had been troubling her. "Why did Paco bring me here? Why risk his people's safety for a white woman?" Nijoni considered her for a long moment before answering. "My brother sees something in you." "What? I do not know." She stirred the cooking pot slowly. "Perhaps he sees himself, one caught between two worlds." "What do you mean?" "Our father was Apache. Our mother was Mexican, captured in a raid." Nijoni's eyes reflected the firelight. Paco was old enough to remember life in her village before she was taken. He learned her language, her ways. When she died, he chose to be fully Apache, but part of him remembers another life. Understanding dawned on Danielle. "That's why his name—" Nijoni nodded. "Francisco became Paco. Then he became Nastas, but all are parts of who he is." She fixed Danielle with a penetrating gaze. "Who are you, Danielle Hartford? The Boston lady, or the woman who rides with Apache?" Before she could answer, commotion erupted at the edge of camp. Paco strode toward them, his expression thunderous. Behind him, Keme and two other warriors dragged a struggling man, Thomas Wheeler. "Look what we found tracking our path," Paco said coldly. Wheeler's face was bruised, his clothing torn. When he saw Danielle, his eyes widened. "So it's true," he spat. "You've gone native, you whore." Paco struck him hard across the face. "You will not speak to her." Wheeler laughed, blood staining his teeth. Blackwood's offering a reward for her return. Said his fiancée was kidnapped by savages. His eyes gleamed maliciously. "Cavalry's already been notified. They're coming for you, Red Shadow, and they'll burn every Apache camp they find until they do." The camp fell silent at his words. Dozens of eyes turned to Danielle, accusation clear in their gaze. Even Nijoni stepped back, her expression hardening. "I never asked Edward to look for me," Danielle said desperately. "I fled from him." "Doesn't matter what you want," Wheeler sneered. "Your lover's pride was hurt when you ran, now he wants his property back." "Enough," Paco ordered. He turned to his warriors, speaking rapidly in Apache. Wheeler was bound and taken away, still hurling insults. Later, in the privacy of Nijoni's wiki-up, Danielle faced Paco's judgment. "Is what he says true?" he asked. "Will soldiers come because of you?" Edward believes himself entitled to everything he desires, she answered honestly. If he's decided he wants me returned, he will use any means. Paco was silent for a long moment, his face unreadable in the dim light. Finally, he spoke. Then we face the same enemy. The simple statement held profound meaning. Not you. We. What will you do with Wheeler? She asked. He has seen our camp. He will not leave these mountains alive. Danielle should have been horrified, but she felt only a cold understanding. Wheeler represented everything she had fled. The cruelty, the ownership, the treatment of people as possessions to be claimed and discarded. And me? She whispered. Paco studied her, his dark eyes reflecting the small fire. That depends on you. Who are you now, Danielle Hartford? The question echoed Nizoni's earlier one. Who was she? The proper Boston lady existed no more. That woman had died in the desert, replaced by someone stronger, someone who had survived. I am whoever I choose to be, she answered, lifting her chin. And I choose not to be a possession. Not Edward's, not Wheeler's, not anyone's. Something like approval flickered in Paco's eyes. Then you have become Apache in spirit, if not in blood. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, could smell the scent of leather and pine that clung to him. When I found you in the rocks, he said quietly, your hair caught the moonlight. It reminded me of the night sky, dark but filled with stars. His hand lifted, hesitating near her face but not touching. I have not seen such beauty in a long time. The simple words, spoken with such raw honesty, touched something deep within Danielle. No flowery poetry or practiced compliments, just truth as he saw it. I thought you would kill me, she admitted. I have killed many men who deserved death, he replied, never a woman who sought only freedom. In that moment, something shifted between them. Recognition of a shared understanding, a common desire for liberty that transcended the boundaries of their different worlds. Paco rose to leave, but Danielle caught his hand. The touch was electric, unexpected. Their eyes met in the flickering light, and words became unnecessary. He understood her invitation without speech, just as she understood his acceptance when he lowered himself beside her once more. Their first kiss was tentative, a crossing of boundaries neither had expected to traverse. His hand finally found her hair, fingers threading through the dark strands with a reverence that made her heart ache. Her palm rested against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath. No more words were spoken that night. None were needed as two souls, each rejected by the world that should have embraced them, found in each other's arms the acceptance they had been denied elsewhere. Chapter 4. Morning light filtered through the wiki-up covering, casting dappled patterns across Danielle's face. She woke slowly, the unfamiliar weight of an arm across her waist, bringing memories of the night flooding back. Paco slept beside her, his features softened in repose, black hair falling across his face. Carefully turning to face him, Danielle studied the man who had claimed her in ways Edward Blackwood never could have understood, not as property, but as an equal, a partner in survival. As if sensing her gaze, Paco's eyes opened, dark and clear. For a moment neither spoke, content to exist in the quiet intimacy of dawn. Your people will not accept this, she finally said softly. Some will not, he acknowledged. Others understand that strength comes in many forms. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. You have shown strength. A commotion outside interrupted them. Paco rose quickly, reaching for his weapons. Danielle pulled on her deerskin dress, following him outside. Kimi stood in the center of camp, his face contorted with rage as he shouted in Apache. The elderly man who had first greeted them, the chief, Danielle had learned, listened with grave attention. What's happening? She asked Nizoni, who approached with a worried expression. Wheeler escaped during the night. Kime was guarding him. Nizoni's eyes were troubled. He blames you. Says you helped him. That's absurd, Danielle protested. I was... She stopped, flushing. With my brother, Nizoni finished wryly. Yes, the camp knows. Paco strode forward to confront Keme, whose accusations grew more heated. The young warrior pointed at Danielle repeatedly, then drew his knife in a clear threat. The chief raised his hand, silencing both men. He spoke at length, his words carrying the weight of final judgment. When he finished, the camp grew deathly quiet. The council has decided, Nizoni translated quietly. We must leave these mountains immediately. Wheeler will lead soldiers here. Danielle must go." "Go where?" Danielle asked, her heart sinking. "Away from our people," Nizoni replied. "The chief says your presence brings destruction." Paco returned to them, his expression stoic but his eyes betraying his inner conflict. "I will take you to the border," he said to Danielle. "There is a Mexican village where you will be safe." "And then?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Then I return to my people. We travel north, into lands where the army does not yet reach." The finality in his voice cut deeper than Danielle expected. One night had changed everything, had awakened feelings she'd never experienced with Edward. The thought of parting from Paco left an emptiness that terrified her. They departed within the hour, the camp dissolving behind them as the Apache vanished into the wilderness with practiced efficiency. Paco and Danielle rode south away from the others, a painful silence between them. By midday, they reached a high ridge overlooking the valley below. Paco reined in his horse, scanning the horizon. Danielle followed his gaze and froze. In the distance, a dust cloud marked the movement of a cavalry patrol, at least 20 riders strong. "They're coming from the south," she said, dread filling her voice. "Cutting off the route to the border." Paco's expression darkened. "Wheeler works quickly." He studied the terrain with practiced eyes. "We must go east, through the canyon. It will be difficult, but the soldiers' horses cannot follow." They rode hard for the canyon, a narrow slash through the mountains that dropped steeply into shadow. As they descended the treacherous path, the sound of distant gunfire echoed through the valley. "Your people," Danielle gasped, looking back. "They know how to disappear," Paco assured her, though tension lined his face. "The soldiers chase ghosts." The canyon walls rose around them, blocking the sun and plunging them into cool dimness. The path narrowed until they were forced to dismount and lead the horse carefully over loose rock. "Why are you doing this?" Danielle asked, as they navigated a particularly difficult section. "Your people were right. I bring danger." Paco paused, turning to face her. "My people say many things, that I am too reckless, that I court death." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Perhaps they are right. Is that what I am? Death?" His expression sobered. "No, you are life." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I have known too much death." The tenderness in the gesture contrasted sharply with his reputation as a merciless warrior. Danielle was beginning to understand the complexity of the man before her, how he could be both gentle and fierce, both Apache and something more. Their moment was shattered by the crack of a rifle. Stone exploded near Danielle's head as a bullet struck the canyon wall. They whirled to find Wheeler standing on a ledge above them, rifle raised. "Found you," he called down, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Indians might be hard to track, but Eastern ladies leave clearer signs." Paco pushed Danielle behind him, reaching for his knife. Wheeler laughed and aimed again. "I wouldn't," he warned. "My shot might miss him and hit you, pretty lady. Blackwood wants you back alive, but accidents happen." "Edward sent you?" Danielle called up, buying time as Paco inched toward cover. "Paid good money," Wheeler confirmed. "Said his fiancée was taken against her will. Poor, traumatized thing probably doesn't even know what she's saying anymore." His grin widened. "Of course, I might collect that reward and keep you for myself. After what you've done with this savage, no proper man would want you anyway." Fury rose in Danielle's chest. "I left Edward. I left Tucson. I chose this life." "Doesn't matter what you chose," Wheeler spat. "Women don't choose, they belong." He shifted his aim to Paco. "And this one belongs on the end of a rope." Everything happened in a blur. As Wheeler's finger tightened on the trigger, Danielle lunged forward, shoving Paco aside. The rifle cracked and searing pain exploded in her shoulder. Paco moved with lightning speed, hurling his knife upward. Wheeler screamed as the blade embedded in his arm, the rifle falling from his grasp and clattering down the rocks. Before he could recover, Paco scaled the canyon wall with impossible agility. Wheeler fumbled for a pistol at his waist, but too late. The two men collided, tumbling in a violent struggle that ended with Wheeler dangling over the edge of the ledge, Paco's hand at his throat. "Please," Wheeler gasped, all bravado gone. "I'll leave. Never come back." "Men like you always come back," Paco replied coldly. "Men like you took my mother from her home, Men like you drove us from our hunting grounds." "Paco!" Danielle called, clutching her bleeding shoulder. "Don't!" He looked down at her, conflict evident in his eyes. "If you kill him, you prove everything they say about you," she continued. "You're more than what they call you, more than Red Shadow." For a long moment, Paco remained frozen, death and mercy balanced on the edge of decision. Then, with a sound of disgust, he hauled Wheeler back from the ledge, striking him once, hard enough to render him unconscious but not to kill. He descended quickly to Danielle's side, examining her wound with gentle hands. "The bullet passed through," he said with relief, "but we must stop the bleeding." Using strips torn from his own clothing, he bandaged her shoulder. The pain was intense, but Danielle bit back her cries, refusing to show weakness. "You saved my life," Paco said quietly as he worked. "Why?" "Because I love you," she answered simply. The words, never spoken to Edward despite their engagement, felt right, true in a way nothing else had been. Surprise registered in Paco's eyes, followed by something deeper. "No one has said these words to me since my mother died. Then they should be said more often." Despite her pain, Danielle smiled. "You are worthy of love, Nastas." The use of his Apache name seemed to touch him deeply. He finished binding her wound, then helped her to her feet. "We must move, the shot will bring others." "What about him?" Danielle nodded toward Wheeler's unconscious form. "He will wake. Whether he finds his way out of these canyons is not my concern." They continued their journey, moving more slowly due to Danielle's injury. By nightfall, they reached a hidden spring where they made camp, the horse grazing nearby on sparse mountain grass. As Paco built a small fire, carefully shielded to prevent its light from being seen, Danielle considered their future. "We can't go south. The cavalry blocks our path. And my people move north," Paco added, sitting beside her. "East lies more settlements, west more soldiers." "We're trapped," she whispered. Paco was silent for a moment, his face thoughtful in the flickering firelight. "Perhaps not." He traced a pattern in the dirt. "There is a place, far to the west, beyond the territories. California. My mother spoke of it, where mountains meet the great water." "The ocean," Danielle supplied. "I've seen it from Boston Harbor. In this place, there are settlements of many peoples, Mexican, Chinese, even Apache who left the wars behind." His eyes met hers. "A place where a woman and a warrior might live without the past following them." Hope kindled in Danielle's chest. "Is it possible? To start anew somewhere no one knows us?" "The journey would be dangerous," he warned. "Across desert worse than what you've seen, past army outposts and hostile tribes." "I've survived worse odds," she replied with newfound confidence. "We both have." Paco's hand found hers in the darkness. "Then we go west. Together." Morning brought a new challenge. As they prepared to depart, the distant sound of hoofbeats echoed through the canyon. Paco scouted ahead, returning with grim news. Cavalry. A full patrol. His expression was tight with concern. "And Blackwood rides with them." Danielle's blood ran cold. "Edward is here himself?" "A man in fine clothes, different from the soldiers. He points the way, leading them through the canyons." Paco's eyes narrowed. "He tracks like one born to it. Better than Wheeler." "He hunted game in the east," Danielle explained. "He prides himself on it." Paco considered this information. "Then we cannot outrun them. We must outsmart them." His plan was audacious. While the patrol followed the main canyon, they would double back along a nearly invisible path that ran parallel, higher up the ridge. If successful, they would emerge behind their pursuers and escape west while the soldiers continued searching eastward. The climb was grueling, especially for Danielle with her injured shoulder. By midday, they had reached the narrow ledge that would serve as their path. Below, they could see the cavalry moving slowly through the winding canyon, Edward riding at the front beside the captain. "Why is he doing this?" Danielle whispered as they watched. "He rejected me. Men like him cannot bear to lose what they consider theirs," Paco replied, "even what they do not want." They moved carefully along the narrow ledge, each step a potential betrayal as loose stones could alert the soldiers below. Danielle's breath came in shallow gasps, her injured shoulder throbbing with every movement. Paco remained close, his hand steadying her at the most treacherous sections. "There," he whispered, pointing to a crevice ahead where the path widened slightly. "We rest there, then continue when they've passed." They reached the sheltered alcove just as Edward's voice drifted up from below. "She couldn't have gotten far," he was saying to the captain. "Not with that savage. My sources say he's distinctive. War paint, ceremonial knife, Red Shadow himself." "If it is Red Shadow," the captain replied, "you should prepare yourself for what we might find, Mr. Blackwood. He's not known for keeping captives alive." "Danielle is resourceful," Edward insisted, "and valuable. He would recognize that." Danielle felt Paco's eyes on her. "He speaks as if you are a prized horse," he said softly. "To Edward, there's little difference," she replied bitterly. They remained hidden as the patrol passed beneath them, continuing deeper into the canyon maze. When the sounds faded, they resumed their journey, following the elevated path until it descended gradually to join another canyon leading westward. By nightfall, they had put considerable distance between themselves and their pursuers. They made camp in a small cave, the entrance shielded by brush. Danielle's wound had begun to fester, her skin hot with fever. Paco crushed herbs he had gathered, mixing them with water to form a poultice. "This will draw out the poison," he explained, applying it to her shoulder. Danielle hissed in pain but didn't pull away. "Will it work? My mother taught me this medicine. The Spanish called her a bruja witch, but she saved many lives." His eyes held a distant memory, including mine, when I was a boy. As he tended her wound, Danielle studied his face in the dim light. "Tell me about her." Paco was silent for a moment, his hands continuing their gentle work. "She was taken in a raid when she was 16, brought to our village as a captive." His voice softened. "My father saw her strength and chose her as wife. In time, she chose him in return." "Like us," Danielle whispered. His eyes met hers, a rare smile touching his lips. "Like us. She taught me her language, her songs, said I must know both worlds to survive in either. Was she right?" "Yes." He secured the bandage. "But knowing both worlds means belonging fully to neither. The Apache see the Spanish in me. The whites see only the savage." Danielle reached up with her good hand, touching his cheek. "I see Paco. I see Nastas. I see all of you." He turned his face into her palm, pressing his lips against it. "Rest now. Tomorrow we face the desert." Dawn brought unwelcome discovery. As Paco scouted the path ahead, he spotted cavalry tracks, fresh ones, cutting across their route westward. "They've split their forces," he reported grimly. "Some continue east, but others circle west. They've guessed our direction." Danielle's fever had broken, but weakness still plagued her. "We can't turn back. Edward will be there." "No," Paco agreed. "We continue west, but with greater caution." Their progress slowed to a crawl as they traveled only at night, hiding during daylight hours. The terrain grew increasingly arid as they left the mountains behind, entering the western desert. Water became precious, game scarce. On the fourth night, they spotted firelight ahead, a cavalry camp positioned directly in their path. There was no way around without adding days to their journey. "We'll never make it past them," Danielle whispered, despair creeping into her voice. Paco studied the camp through narrowed eyes. "Perhaps we don't need to." His plan was both simple and desperate. Using skills honed through years of guerrilla warfare against the army, Paco created a diversion. A small fire set carefully to the north, appearing to be a hasty Apache camp. As expected, most of the patrol rode out to investigate, leaving only 2 men to guard the horses. Paco dealt with them swiftly and silently, leaving them bound but unharmed. "Choose," he told Danielle, gesturing to the army horses. "One with endurance. We ride hard tonight." They selected 2 strong mounts, taking only minimal supplies. By the time the patrol discovered the ruse, Paco and Danielle were miles away, the desert opening before them like a vast ocean. For 10 days they traveled, surviving on Paco's hunting skills and carefully rationed water. The desert gave way gradually to more hospitable terrain, scrubland, then scattered oak woodlands. Danielle's wound healed slowly but steadily under Paco's care. On the 11th day they reached a river, wide, swift, and blessed with life along its banks. Paco studied the landscape with satisfaction. "We've crossed into California territory," he announced. "The soldiers from Arizona have no authority here." For the first time since fleeing Tucson, Danielle felt something like hope blossoming in her chest. "Are we safe?" "Safer," Paco amended cautiously. "But we must still be careful until we reach the coast." They followed the river downstream, the land growing richer and more abundant with each passing day. Occasionally they spotted distant settlements, small farms, ranches, but avoided contact. It was near one such settlement, 3 weeks after crossing into California, that disaster struck. They had stopped to rest in a grove of trees when riders appeared suddenly, not soldiers, but local ranchers on patrol against cattle thieves. Before they could retreat, they were surrounded. The men's expressions hardened when they saw Paco, weapons rising. "Wait!" Danielle moved in front of him, hands raised. "We're travelers, heading west. We mean no harm." The lead rancher, a weathered man with gray-streaked hair, eyed them suspiciously. "Mighty strange traveling companions. You his captive, ma'am?" "No," she replied firmly. "I'm his wife." The declaration brought stunned silence, followed by muttered oaths. "That true, Indian?" the rancher demanded. Paco met his gaze steadily. "She is mine as I am hers. By choice, not capture." The rancher spat on the ground. "Well, ain't that something? Don't know how they do things where you come from. But out here, that kind of mixing don't sit right." "We're just passing through," Danielle insisted. "We seek the coast." "Coast's still a good ways west," the rancher replied, "and you won't reach it passing through Blackwood land." Danielle felt the blood drain from her face. "Blackwood?" "Edward Blackwood. Owns half this valley. Came out from Arizona Territory last month. Bought the old Spanish grant." The rancher studied her reaction with new interest. "You know him?" Before she could respond, Paco stepped forward. "We will go around his land. We want no trouble." The rancher considered them for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "Can't let you do that. Blackwood's offering rewards for information on Apache raiders. Says they took something valuable from him." His eyes fixed on Danielle. "Guessing that'd be you, ma'am." "Please," Danielle began, but the men were already closing in. What happened next unfolded with the chaotic speed of violence. Paco moved with lethal precision, disarming the nearest rancher and using him as a shield. Danielle, drawing on newfound strength, seized a fallen pistol and fired it into the air, creating enough confusion for them to break through the circle of men. They fled on horseback, bullets whizzing past them. One grazed Paco's arm, but he rode on grimly, leading them deeper into unfamiliar territory. By nightfall they had lost their pursuers, but gained a terrible knowledge. Edward had somehow anticipated their destination and positioned himself directly in their path. How could he know? Danielle wondered, as they made camp in a hidden ravine. Men like Blackwood have resources, informants, telegraph lines. Paco wrapped his injured arm with a strip of cloth. Or perhaps he simply knows you well enough to guess. The thought chilled her. "What do we do now?" Paco's expression was resolute. "We face him. There is no more running. Face him. Edward has money, men, power, and we have truth." Paco took her hands in his. "You are not his property. You never were. It is time he learns this." The next morning, they rode directly toward Edward's ranch. It was a calculated risk. He would expect them to avoid him, to circle around. Directness might catch him unprepared. The Blackwood Ranch sprawled across Prime Valley land, the main house visible from miles away, a grand structure that seemed transplanted from another world. As they approached, ranch hands spotted them, raising the alarm. Edward himself emerged onto the broad porch, rifle in hand. When he saw Danielle, his expression shifted from wariness to satisfaction. "Danielle!" he called as they halted their horses at the edge of the yard. "Thank God! I've been searching for you for months." "I know," she replied coldly. "Why, Edward? You made it clear I had no value to you in Tucson." Edward's smile was smooth as glass. "A misunderstanding. I was shocked by the news of your father's misfortune." Spoke hastily. He extended a hand. "Come inside. You must have suffered terribly." His eyes slid to Paco with undisguised contempt. "As for your captor, the authorities will deal with him appropriately." "He's not my captor," Danielle stated clearly, loudly enough for the gathering ranch hands to hear. "He's my husband." Edward's facade cracked, ugly rage flashing across his features. "Don't be absurd. Whatever this savage forced you to do, he forced nothing, Danielle interrupted. I chose him. I choose him still. She speaks truth, Paco added, his voice steady despite the rifles aimed at him. We come only to pass through to the coast. Then you will never see us again. Edward laughed harshly. You think it's that simple, that you can take what's mine and simply walk away? He gestured to his men. Separate them. The woman inside. The Indian. His smile turned cruel. Well, accidents happen on the frontier. The ranch hands moved forward hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Danielle reached for Paco's hand, gripping it tightly. I won't go with you, Edward, she declared. Those days are past. You have no choice, Edward snarled, his refinement dissolving completely. A woman alone has no rights, no protection, especially one who's been, he gestured disgustedly toward Paco, contaminated. A new voice interrupted, firm and authoritative. That's quite enough, Blackwood. All heads turned as a man rode into the yard, older, with a silver star pinned to his vest. The county sheriff. Sheriff Davis, Edward greeted him, instantly regaining his composure. Perfect timing. These are the fugitives I reported. The Apache raider and my kidnapped fiancée. Sheriff Davis dismounted slowly, studying the tableau before him with experienced eyes. Heard there was trouble. Came to investigate myself. He turned to Danielle. Ma'am, you being held against your will? No, she stated firmly. I left Tucson voluntarily. Mr. Blackwood and I were briefly engaged, but he broke that engagement when he learned my family had lost their fortune. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. That right, Blackwood? Edward's face flushed. She's confused, traumatized by her ordeal. I'm perfectly clear-minded, Danielle countered. Ask your ranch hands about the reward you've been offering, not for a kidnapped fiancé, but for something valuable taken from you. Property, not a person you loved. Several of the ranch hands shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Edward's glare. Sheriff, Paco spoke up, we seek only passage to the coast. We have committed no crime in California territory. Sheriff Davis considered him thoughtfully. Your red shadow. I was called this. Now I am simply Paco. He's a murderer, Edward protested, a raider responsible for dozens of deaths. In Arizona territory, the sheriff pointed out. Outside my jurisdiction, even if those claims are true. He turned back to Paco. However, I can't have armed Apache warriors crossing through settled lands. Creates unease. Danielle stepped forward. Then we'll surrender our weapons. Submit to your escort to the coast, anything that ensures safe passage. The sheriff rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. And once you reach the coast, we start a new life, she answered simply. Away from the past. Edward made a sound of disbelief. This is absurd. She belongs to herself, Sheriff Davis interrupted sharply. This ain't Arizona, Blackwood. California law don't recognize forced marriages or ownership of people. His eyes narrowed. Not anymore. For a long moment, tension hung in the air like summer lightning. Edward's hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, his face a mask of thwarted rage. You can't do this, he finally hissed. Already doing it, the sheriff replied calmly. He turned to Danielle and Paco. You'll surrender those weapons and come with me to town. I'll arrange safe passage to San Francisco. His eyes held a warning. But once there, you're on your own. And if trouble follows you, don't expect me to step in again. Relief washed over Danielle. Thank you, Sheriff. As they prepared to leave, Edward made one last, desperate play. She has my property, family heirlooms. I demand their return. Sheriff Davis looked to Danielle questioningly. I have nothing of his except the clothes I wore when I left Tucson, she replied. Everything else was given to me by Paco's people. Edward stepped closer, voice lowered. This isn't over, Danielle. A woman like you living with a savage. You'll never be accepted, never find peace. Paco moved between them, his voice equally quiet, but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. She has already found what matters most. Freedom, respect, love. His dark eyes held Edward's. Things you could never give her, no matter how much gold you possess. The truth in his words seemed to strike deeper than any physical blow. Edward recoiled, then turned away sharply, storming back toward his house without another word. Under Sheriff Davis's escort, they rode to the small town of Redwood Creek. True to his word, He arranged passage on a trading wagon heading to San Francisco, extracting from them a promise to continue westward without delay. As they prepared to depart the following morning, the sheriff offered a final piece of advice. There are communities north of San Francisco, mixed settlements where Mexicans, Indians, and whites live together. Not always peacefully, mind you, but with tolerance. He handed Paco a folded paper. Names of people who might help. Good people who judge by character, not color. Why help us? Danielle asked. Sheriff Davis's weathered face softened slightly. My wife was Miwok. Faced the same looks, same whispers you will. He glanced at the wedding band he still wore. Worth every moment of it. Their journey to San Francisco passed without incident, though they remained vigilant for any sign of pursuit. The coastal city overwhelmed them with its bustling energy, the mingling of cultures, the tang of salt air. They stayed only long enough to secure passage further north to a small settlement near the Russian River, where, according to the sheriff's contacts, they might find acceptance. Redwood Valley welcomed them with cautious curiosity rather than hostility. The community, a blend of displaced natives, Mexican farmers, and Americans seeking new beginnings, had formed its own unwritten code, judged by actions, not origins. They built a small cabin on the valley's edge, where forest met meadow. Danielle learned to cultivate the rich soil, while Paco's hunting skills and knowledge of the wilderness earned respect among their neighbors. It wasn't paradise. Occasional travelers brought prejudice with them. Some locals maintained their distance. But for the first time, both Danielle and Paco found a place where they could simply be, together, without the weight of history demanding they remain apart. On a warm evening 6 months after their arrival, they sat outside their cabin watching the sun set behind ancient redwoods. Danielle's hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, where new life grew, a child of two worlds yet belonging fully to this one. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Leaving your people? Paco considered the question, his hand covering hers. My mother told me once that home is not a place but a feeling, of safety, of being known completely and accepted still. His dark eyes met hers. I have found this with you. Danielle leaned against him, the scent of pine and leather still as comforting as the first night in the desert. My night sky, she murmured, using the name he had given her months ago. My freedom, he replied, the simple exchange holding all the poetry their love required. As darkness gathered, stars appeared overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting in the Arizona wilderness. But here on this patch of earth they now called their own, those stars no longer represented the vast distance between their worlds. Instead, they illuminated a single truth, that sometimes the greatest journeys lead not to places, but to people, and in finding each other both had finally found their way home. The end. Dear listener, as night falls on our Arizona tale, I wonder if you've noticed how the desert stars mirror the ones outside your window tonight, constant, yet ever-changing in their constellations of possibility. Like the weathered canyons that sheltered Danielle and Paco, your life has been carved by time, each line and hollow a testament to waters that once rushed through, leaving beauty in their wake. The landscape of your face tells stories no book could capture. Have you considered that the most powerful journeys often begin with rejection? When Edward dismissed Danielle, he unknowingly set her free. Sometimes our greatest disappointments are doorways disguised as dead ends. What closed door in your past eventually revealed an unexpected vista? In the silence between my words, I invite you to remember a moment when, like Paco extending his hand in the moonlight, you chose trust over fear. How did that moment reshape your path? Tonight, as you prepare for slumber, imagine the gentle weight of redwood branches above you, ancient sentinels that have witnessed centuries of human struggles, yet continue reaching skyward. Let their patient strength infuse your dreams. Your generation built bridges while crossing rivers far more turbulent than the ones in our story. You've witnessed worlds transform, borders reshape, impossibilities become commonplace. Yet in this ever-shifting landscape, your inner compass remains steady. When morning light filters through your window, may it remind you of that first California sunrise Danielle and Paco witnessed, a promise that even after the longest night, renewal awaits. The horizon is still offering invitations, remember. Even the most feared Apache warrior found tenderness within himself. What softness have you rediscovered lately? What gentle strength awaits your recognition? I leave you with this thought. True belonging, like Danielle and Paco found, never demands you become smaller. It simply creates space for you to unfold completely. Rest well beneath your own canopy of stars. Your favorite storytelling team, Wild West Whispers. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this journey. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel, leaving a like, a comment, and sharing it with someone who loves romance as much as you do. Your support keeps us inspired to continue telling stories full of love, redemption, and unforgettable twists. We're truly grateful. And don't go just yet. Another beautiful story is waiting for you at the end of this video. Click and be surprised by more emotional tales like this one. With heartfelt gratitude, Wild West Whispers team.